If true leaders emerge in times of hardship, this year offered no shortage of tests. And yet, this was a year in which Europe's power players were thrown completely off balance. The return of Donald Trump as US president rumbled like an earthquake through a continent still reeling from the invasion of Ukraine. The speed with which Washington turned from trusted ally to potential adversary shook the foundations on which Europe has long relied. Instead of guaranteeing the continent's security, Trump openly threatened it, vowing to take Greenland and encouraging Ukraine to give up territory in exchange for peace with Russia. Where Washington once led on climate, free trade, and the fight against the far right, suddenly it stood against them. Ranking the most powerful people in Europe is never simple. This year was no exception. Tonight, we look to the year ahead. Who in Europe is ready to step up to the challenge? Who is likely to harness the moment and push their agenda? Welcome to Politico 28, the class of 2026.
Okay. All right. I think folks need to sit down. Please take a seat. We're going to start the program. I'd love to do some introductions, but I'll give folks just a minute to sit down, and then we'll get started. Please take your seats. Good evening, everyone. Please take your seats. We're going to start the program in 1 or 2 seconds. Take a seat. We'll have lots of time to have conversation. We got a great after party. At this point, I'd love for you guys to take a seat. Please take your seats, and then we'll get started. All right. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Politico 28. I'm Carrie Budoff-Brown, and I'm going to give you just a second to sit down, and then I'm going to begin. Thank you. I mean, it's a tough job, right? People want to talk. I totally get it. All right. Good evening, and welcome to Politico 28. I'm Carrie Budoff-Brown, and I was thrilled to return to Politico in September as our executive editor in Brussels and executive vice president. It's really great to be here tonight with each of you. Madam President, who is going to come out shortly, Madam Executive Vice President, commissioners, ministers, ambassadors, CEOs, and esteemed guests. Like clockwork, as each calendar year comes to a close, we at Politico begin contemplating the next P28 list. Our journalists and editors collectively ask themselves one important question: who will set Europe's direction in the year ahead? This list has taken many shapes over the years, but one thing remains constant. Power, how it is defined and who wields it, is forever changing. This year's list reflects that evolution more starkly than ever, starting with the leader we placed at the top, Donald Trump. This isn't a decision we took lightly, and it came only after a significant amount of debate in our European newsroom. To be clear, we've always reserved our European power list for Europeans, but we couldn't ignore the scale of Trump's impact on politics and policy, on public sentiment, and on the geopolitical forces pressing in on the continent. The ground is moving beneath Europe, and our list had to reflect that reality. But it's also no coincidence that the next two leaders on the list, Denmark's Mette Frederiksen and Germany's Friedrich Merz, are at the forefront of the scramble to adapt to this new era. And while I do know a lot of attention is paid to Trump and to our interview this week, and to all of his comments that come out of Washington, tonight is a conversation about Europe and the forces and people shaping its future, including our compelling lineup of speakers tonight. Many of those forces are homegrown, others arrive from Washington, Moscow, or Beijing. All of them demand clarity, steadiness, and rigorous reporting. So we're big fans of a good debate at Politico, so please dive into that conversation during the breaks. And when we're back on stage, we would love your full attention. You can save the conversation for the next pause, or better yet, we're gonna have a great after party right behind those curtains. You can find a copy of the program on the back of your menu. And I just wanna pause for a second here and just make sure people are aware tonight's program wouldn't be possible without our many table partners in the room and our presenting partners, FPA, EQT, and GSMA, FPA. We also hope that you enjoyed our kickoff reception, thanks to our networking partners, General Catalyst, and our drink partners, Beam Suntory. As we kick off our program, we invite you to please go ahead and enjoy your starter. But now we're incredibly excited to start the evening with some new announcements about Politico and the importance of this moment. So to do that, please help me welcome Politico Media Group CEO, Goli Sheikholeslami, to the stage.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Madam President, Madam Executive Vice President, commissioners, ministers, ambassadors, CEOs, and esteemed guests, I am delighted that so many of you have joined us for our annual gala. While tonight is a festive occasion, the work we are all about is serious. The stakes could not be higher for Europe and the world. At critical times like these, relationships matter more than ever, and relationships based on trust. Trust between institutions, trust between people, and trust in credible sources you can rely on. You trust Politico to provide you with the indispensable journalism you need to stay a step ahead and to tell the stories that convey the complexity of the challenges we face and their emotional impact. Like the story told by Politico of 16-year-old Vlad and his friends, Ukrainian teenagers taken by Russians from their schools and streets, forced into re-education camps ringed with barbed wire, where children were locked in basements, beaten, and held in 2-by-2 meter isolation units. Vlad and his friends refused to break and eventually made their way home. Yet tens of thousands of Ukrainian children remain unlawfully kidnapped and held by Russia in barbaric conditions. Vlad's story gives perspective to our months of reporting that has led us to this moment. Our coverage of a rain-soaked October summit in Brussels that failed to provide Ukraine with a vital lifeline built towards last week's analysis of an unprecedented United States national security strategy, heavily critical of Europe and praised by Russia. And in Monday's exclusive interview with Politico, President Trump cast doubt on the formerly unbreakable transatlantic bonds with Ukraine's survival and the security of Europe in the balance. Stories such as these convey the urgency of now, the need to shape Europe for the future, not just for security, prosperity, and freedom on this continent and across the Channel, but for the good of the transatlantic relationship and the world. Tonight, we will hear more on the challenges and opportunities ahead of us from European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on her vision for how Europe can and must shape its future, from European Commission Executive Vice President Teresa Ribera on her mission to make Europe more competitive in ways that help the planet, from U.S. Ambassador to the European Union, Andrew Puzder, who believes deregulation can help Europe's path forward, from Yulia Navalnya, who carries on her and her husband's courageous work to restore Russia to its people, and from Gabriel Zucman, whose ideas on economy and taxation have shaken governments. Hearing directly from such speakers reaffirms Politico's mission to cut through the noise and help Europe's most influential audience, all of you, understand what is next, not just what has happened. 10 years ago, we launched Politico in Brussels. Today, we have the largest newsroom of any media organization dedicated to covering the institutions of the European Union and NATO. Over the past 3 years, we significantly expanded our reach in London, Paris, and Berlin. Tonight, I'm pleased to announce that we are further expanding our European operations. Starting early next year, we will launch a daily playbook podcast right here in Brussels to make better use of your morning commute. We will continue to expand our footprint in Germany by launching our third policy team covering healthcare. We'll increase our partnership with the Munich Security Conference with an even more ambitious execution of our trademark Politico Pub, and invest in the European business leaders community, the convener of the Northern Lights Conference, which has brought together top business leaders, politicians, thinkers, and media for the last 25 years. And saving the biggest announcement for last, I am delighted to announce that Politico will expand to Spain in 2026, establishing a Spanish-language Madrid playbook in time for the 2026-27 session of Parliament. And we will hold our first major event in Spain with the Spanish business consultancy B. Bartlett on April 9th and 10th in Barcelona. So why are we doubling down our operations in Europe? Precisely because what is happening now in Europe stretches across the Atlantic and around the world, and Politico, with our global reach, are here to tell the story. So in closing, let me ask the question that has been the topic of conversation all year. Will Europe seize the urgency of this moment to reshape for the future, and can it move fast enough? I believe the months ahead will bring more clarity to this question, and Politico will be there with you, uniquely positioned to provide our indispensable, in-depth, nonpartisan journalism to you, the decision makers and influencers who will determine if Europe succeeds. Thank you so much and enjoy the evening.
Thank you, Goli. So we're going to get started here in a town like Brussels. Our first guest needs no introduction, but I'm going to give her one. Leading the European Commission since 2019, Ursula von der Leyen has become known for her firm leadership style. This year, Politico ranks the seasoned German politician number 7 with the tagline, "The Iron Hand." So please help me welcome Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission. Welcome. I know it's for us little people, it's maybe a little bit tough, but it's great to have you here, Madam President. I do want to start with a question very much on the minds of the people in this room. Will there be a funding agreement by next week for Ukraine to keep the fight up in Russia? Or in Ukraine against Russia, of course.
So we're working intensively towards a just and lasting peace. And I emphasize just and lasting because this peace agreement should be such a solid peace agreement that it does not sow the seeds for the next conflict immediately. The negotiations about the agreement are moving forward. That is good. And the 20-point plan is taking more and more shape. I think the most difficult topics are, on one hand, the territories. And this is something which can only be decided by President Zelensky and the people of Ukraine. Mm-hmm. The second most important topic is the security guarantees. These have to be very robust security guarantees. As I said, they have to make sure that there is a lasting peace. Mm-hmm. And we always speak about the steel porcupine that Ukraine has to be so that it is indigestible for any potential invader. Okay. And the third topic are the immobilized Russian assets, where we are working intensively on to make sure that we can take the cash balances, hand them to Ukraine as a loan for financing for Ukraine for the next 2 years. And Ukraine has only to pay back these loans if Russia pays reparations. And here we are going a step forward now tomorrow for the first step in dealing with this topic, that we will secure the immobilization of the Russian assets, which is an important point because we need the certainty that these Russian assets will work for the reconstruction and the reparation of Ukraine.
So this development, does that mean that what we'll see is something around the assets, not looking to the plan B or C of Eurobonds, that it is your focus right now is on using those assets and that's what you're pushing towards?
So the first step that we are going to take, hopefully tomorrow, is indeed to secure the immobilization. That is very important, but because so far the Russian assets were immobilized for 6 months, and every 6 months we had to renew this immobilization by unanimity. So there's quite a risk that all of a sudden these assets are gone. And therefore, this step tomorrow is to make sure that we secure these assets, that the cash balances can work for Ukraine, can fund Ukraine, and can be invested in the reconstruction. A second step is then how are we going to use these cash balances? And indeed, as you said, the financing of Ukraine, this is going to be decided in the following week at the European Council. We have quite advanced. It is very innovative. It is qualified majority voting that we have to do there. We have to take into account, and we are working on intensively, in dividing or distributing the risks that goes along with that, that at the moment Belgium is carrying on broad shoulders of the whole of the European Union. But this is the second step.
What's your level of confidence right now that Belgium will come around?
Look,
to the point of view that you're pushing?
We are working day and night with Belgium. I must say it is a very constructive work. This is not trivial. This is absolutely innovative.
Yeah.
It's never happened before. So, and of course we understand the concerns of Belgium, and it's just intense work. I think we've advanced quite a lot already and taken in their concerns and respected them in the proposal. But the next days will show whether we come to a final agreement.
Let me ask you, if the European leaders, if you fail to reach an agreement next week, do you worry that President Zelensky in Ukraine will be forced into accepting a peace deal or some sort of peace deal that is not favorable to them?
I think it is extremely important, as I said, that this peace agreement does not sow the seeds for the next conflict. I mean, we've seen this in 2014. There we've seen that the peace agreement and the security guarantees were not holding, were not robust enough, and that the peace agreement was only giving time for Russia to regroup, to reorganize, and the next invasion then came in 2022. So this time it is of utmost importance that this peace agreement is for just and a lasting peace, and here the security guarantees play an enormous role.
You know, I wanted to, you started your most recent State of the Union, State of the European Union speech on a pretty urgent note saying Europe is in a fight. That you also asked whether Europe had the stomach for the fight and the political will to compromise. You're now 3 months on. It's been a pretty, eventful, some would say pretty tough 3 months trying to get to a place where you can keep Ukraine in the fight. So I'm wondering, are your fellow European leaders falling short of what you think this moment demands?
No, the opposite is the case. I mean, if you just go one step backwards and look at the overall picture, the 6 years now that I'm in office, it started with a pandemic. The pandemic was barely over. We had in 2022 the invasion of Russia in Ukraine. A severe energy crisis was following. And now we are really focusing laser sharp on improving our competitiveness. We have to have a huge surge in defense we are working on, and we have to reduce our dependency. So it's a whole program. And here I must say, the leaders, for all of us is very clear, none of these challenges or none of these crises could have been managed by a member state on its own. But at 27, that's the fantastic part about the European Union, at 27 we can move mountains. We have proven this with the vaccines. We have proven this with the energy crisis. We are working together intensively on the capital market now to improve our competitiveness, innovation, digitalization, all these topics. At 27, we can move mountains.
On the Ukraine itself, though,
your question was focused on Ukraine.
It was about Ukraine.
Yeah.
I mean, which is.
But here too, if I may. Yeah.
Please, no, go ahead. No, I mean, that is what I wanted to ask. Like, then I was focused pretty on Ukraine, and then how would you sort of explain this inability, to get to this point? We had, Mark Rutte today with pretty urgent words as well that, Europe needs to prepare for a war with Russia. Do you agree with that? That this continent is on the cusp of that?
Looking at Ukraine, Russia invaded Ukraine in February 22 with the goal to take Kyiv in 3 days and Ukraine in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Putin completely failed. Now we are in the 4th year. And in the last 12 months, he advanced by 1% only of the territory. So we are in the 4th year of a war of attrition. He's maneuvered himself in. Ukraine, that had no defense at the very beginning, has withstood, thanks to the bravery, the courage of the people, but also the ingenuity, the innovative spirit, and the support of the European Union. Because Europe, over all these years, has supported Ukraine financially, 185 billion euros, 66 billion of this are military support. So this is amazing to see how this country was able to withstood, and the unity of the European Union. We should not forget, I mean, it's Russia that invaded Ukraine, and the war will be over at the moment Russia stops fighting.
So on the issue of defense readiness, quickly, I guess, but I'm wondering, you've warned that Europe is not quite prepared for the security environment it faces. Obviously, you're doing a lot of things to move to that place. I'm wondering how many years it will take for Europe to be fully capable of defending itself.
That's a good question. We have not the luxury of time.
How much time do we have?
So, as we cannot foresee in the future what will happen, I can only say we have an enormous urgency, and we have to be faster and faster and faster. And indeed, I mean, if you look at the last year, when it comes to defense. During the last year, more has happened than during the last decades in the European Union. For the first time ever, we have a full-time commissioner for defense. For the first time ever, we have a white book. But I think even more important is the financing. If you look at the last decade, 8 billion have been invested in defense on the European level. During the last year, we enabled an investment, a surge of defense investment of 800 billion till 2030. And I think the most successful is the 150 billion of the SAFE instrument. It is so oversubscribed by the member states that some are calling for a second SAFE instrument. So all this, you're right, we do it with an enormous sense of urgency, not only for defense, but because we know it is about our freedom, it is about our prosperity, and it is about our democracy that we have to defend.
So I do want to turn my gaze back to, I think, the United States just a bit and ask you a question, how the EU, to bring up our interview with Donald Trump and also the national security strategy that was released last week. How is the EU responding to a new US strategy that's aimed at, quote, cultivating resistance on this continent to the EU? Donald Trump and his national security strategy, part of it is to say that the policy of the United States is now to cultivate resistance on this continent to the EU. How do you respond to what is now a U.S. policy towards the EU and the continent?
In general, it is not on us and on nobody when it comes to election, to decide who the leader of the country will be, but on the people of this country. That's very clear. That's the sovereignty of the voters, and this must be protected. This is one of the reasons, for example, why we have proposed the democracy shield now, because this is a phenomenon that we see all over the place, that we really have to shield our democracy and make sure that elections are fair and free. That's the crown jewel of our democracies.
You saying that, does that make you worried?
This goes in general for anybody. It's the voters who decide who is the leaders, and nobody else is supposed to interfere without any question.
It's kind of remarkable to talk about the democracy shield when I ask a question about the United States. How does that sit with you, hearing what you've heard this past week, the critique of the leaders of this continent?
You know what I always think, I have always had a very good working relationship with the presidents of the United States, and this is also the case today. And from the bottom of my heart, I'm a convinced transatlanticist. But what is so important? Important is that we position ourselves, that we take pride in being the European Union, that we look on our strengths and that we deal with the challenges that we do have. And if we keep this in mind, of course, our relationship to the United States has changed. Why? Because we are changing. And this is so important, that we keep in mind what is our position, what is our strength. Let's work on these. Let's take pride in that. Let's stand up for a unified Europe. And this is our task, and not always in the mirror of others, but look at ourselves and be proud of ourselves.
So just to that point, and I'm now... As you can see, President, I'm now a good 3 minutes over time, but I do want to ask you before we move on, look ahead to 2026. What is the one thing that you absolutely want the Commission to deliver on next year?
Well, if I would not be serious, I would say I would love if the Commission enables it that I have a little bit more sleep. But on a very serious note, if you ask about the Commission, then as the guardian of the treaty, it is competitiveness, prosperity, democracy. But if you look at the wider topic, there from the bottom of my heart, I'm wishing for peace in Ukraine. I often think of these poor people since 4 years now, every day, every night, this harassment and this terror that they experience, and the incredibly steadfastness that these people have proven. So peace is what I'm wishing for 2026.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. With that, thank you so much, President von der Leyen, for being here with us tonight. I am grateful for that and appreciate your remarks and sharing your thoughts. At this point, we're going to take a break while dinner is served. Please enjoy your meal, and we'll be back after the party.